Presenter is Matt McNichol. He is with the Natural Resources Conservation Service, otherwise known as NRCS, and he's here to tell you what a healthy forest looks like.
Thank you, Rosalind. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Great turnout. Thank you all for coming again. So I'm the forester for NRCS that covers basically the Central Sierras, and our agency's mission is conservation technical assistance, working with private landowners and agricultural producers of food and fiber. So that's our mission, is to help agricultural producers enhance resources on their land. So what I was asked to do today is talk about what is a healthy forest, and it's for the purpose of this we'll stick with what's a fire healthy forest. And any fuels presentation has to have at least one diagram of the fire triangle. The oxygen, the heat, and the fuel to make the fire. If you take away one of them, the fire will go out. And I was looking at it and I thought, this is a good diagram for PowerPoint presentations I've made in the past too, because I've gotten up here and suddenly seen a severe lack of oxygen in the room, and some people getting really hot from hot air coming this way, so it makes them run out to get more coffee and food or fuel to get through it. So I'll try to keep that at a minimum today. And start with the definition. What is a healthy forest? And if you ask 6 different people, you're going to get 6 different questions. It's a very individual thing, and it's up to you. What are your management goals? What kind of forest are you working in? And it's all relative. It's going to be different for each one, but today we'll stick to basically what's a fire healthy forest and what does that mean, and what are some of the major issues that you look at. And primarily it's vegetation density and the fuel loads. That's the first thing, and then how are those arranged on the landscape. So we'll go through some general concepts, and there's probably a lot of stuff that's already familiar to you. Hopefully we can identify some questions that you might have. But all of these things look at larger landscape, forest issues, but they relate right down to the quarter-acre lot too. A lot of the physical attributes of these forests are what's going to make your property fire safe, no matter what size it is, really. And there should be a "the" between that. So what's ultimate goal? It's not a new game show or anything like that. So what's the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is to not really. There's no way to fireproof a forest. The only thing we can do is minimize the intensity and the damage that the fire does. So really, what we do, working with landowners and folks trying to figure this out, is just get it to burn in a way that it's going to be a forest afterwards. And it's going to protect all of those, what we call ecosystem functions or ecosystem services that forests provide. And so getting back to, what kind of forest you're in, this was mentioned before. I like this. I found this, it's the one I did, one in the slide that I didn't reference. I found it online. I clipped this and then I couldn't find the paper again, but it shows the elevational influence plus the precipitation plus the aspect, how all those things come in to influence what kind of vegetation grows on your property. And like it says below, vegetation it's really just an expression of the site. The amount of rain you get, the depth of the soils, your aspect, and elevation, particularly in the Sierras. And of course, that's going to influence, what a healthy forest is, what kind of forest you're in. And when we talk about fire health, forest health in relation to fire, and what it looks like, we kind of have to work backwards to pre-suppression times. A lot of the situations we're in today stem from continuous suppression of fuels. And this is just a study showing a number of different tree ring studies showing fire return intervals where, in the 90th percentile, it's in the, 15 average year return cycle with a, 5 to 30 range. So that means every 5 to 30 years, and then, with some outliers, the forest would burn in this part of the country. And in contrast, what we see today is on the left, compared to the pre-suppression time. So we're at quite a departure from where we were in the past, and that's causing a lot of the severe fire behavior that we're seeing today on some of these larger fires, the very recent large fires. And so this is a really interesting slide, or excerpt from GTR 237. That's a great reference. Also, the bulk of the material for my presentation is just from the Sierra Nevada Ecosystem Project. That's a great compendium of knowledge, and the GTR 220 is another great thing to look at. There's just so much information out there to look at. It's hard to get it all in one place and have the time to look at it. But this is showing the Illilouette Valley, which was recently featured in the California Burning series, which was really good. If you haven't heard it, it's on public radio. It's showing that really, we think of pre-suppression fires as low and just burning the understory, but they were mixed severities. You had some stand replacing intensities where it burned large pockets, but a lot of studies show that those pockets really, on average, about 5 acres. We weren't seeing whole watersheds experiencing, stand replacing intensity like we're seeing recently. And this is just another graphical example. This is from Aspen Valley in Yosemite as well, and it's a graphical depiction of what that might look like, if you were to walk a straight line through that, unsuppressed kind of forest system. And if you have smaller ownerships, this may not be feasible, but that doesn't mean that you can't have a fire-safe forest. We just look at some of the attributes, and it's on the whole, it's that variability that prevented really high severity fires from carrying through the whole forest. So you'd have gaps, different age classes, and those kinds of characteristics that you can work into any scale really that'll help fireproof your forest or fire safe your forest. And so when we talk about fuel types, there's just 3 broad general categories, and it's surface, what's on the ground, your ladder fuels, which is generally the understory and midstory, and the crown. And so all of those come into play when you're looking at how fire is going to move through a particular stand or forest, and how we try to address some of those issues now when we walk into forests that have been fire suppressed or have had other issues in the past. And when we look at this, we hear a lot about fuel continuity, and it's just the simple concept of how contiguous are all these fuels stacked up against each other. And so when I look at something, I always imagine kind of like a cylinder, if you will, a quarter acre, and just imagine putting a giant tube over it, and how much of that area is filled with fuel touching each other on a horizontal plane, and then how much of it rises into each one of those layers. And this one we have a lot of horizontal continuity, and even though there's good heterogeneity or variability in the overstory, there's still a lot of vertical continuity between those 2 strata. And then this is a different picture where you still have both of the same, more of a timber fuel type that we commonly experience, where we have a lot of advanced regeneration that would be controlled by frequent fires, but have not been since we've suppressed fire. So you have a lot of vertical and continuity and horizontal continuity through these stands. And from here, I'll just run through some some pictures and graphical representations of what we do to try to restore some of those more historic conditions. And when I was going to school, the silvicultural texts were really heavy with these, and I love creating them in PowerPoint, so I always have some of these in here too. But this is a pretty common situation that we walk into, really pretty complex stands now that have a lot of stems per acre, and it can be overwhelming figuring out where to start. But a lot of times we're looking at over 600 stems per acre, and that can just be in the understory. So whether it was a fire in the past, a high-intensity fire, or a harvesting method that wasn't adequately regenerated, something has to be done in these kinds of situations to lower the fire intensity at a scale that'll do that. And our main intention is to generally just restore those conditions that would happen after a low intensity fire. And I mean, that's kind of the way to look at it, is if you can behave, through our practices that we talk about later, by chainsaw clearing or mechanical practices, just to break up those continuities on a horizontal and vertical plane, and try to restore some of the variability in the spatial arrangements of those trees. That's kind of the primary goal that we look at with landowners that are interested in doing this kind of work. That we've done with through our programs and through our partners, moving up the elevational gradient in the Sierras. So this is a low elevation forest around Poole, California, in El Dorado County, and this was a reforestation/fuels project. It was a canyon that was harvested, a while ago, probably in the 60s, maybe 50s, and never reforested. And as you're down in those lower elevations, the less drier, hotter kind of things, they're a little more fragile as far as getting pine back in there. But you get a tremendous amount of fuels benefit by doing this kind of work. Creating that break in fuels continuity. And most of the reforestation you can't see was down in a river canyon there, but on the hilltops we did a lot of fuels reduction work around that to break up some of that fuel load. This is about 2,500 feet in Calaveras County, and it's an old plantation. It was planted at about 800 trees per acre, and manzanita filled in almost 60%, 70% cover in the understory. And not every forest is going to look like these mixed ages with different structures and complexity. Some of them are very simple, and all you can do is reduce the fuels and create some of that vertical separation through pruning, and just hope that you can move that stand into a more fire resilient size class before the next fire does come into it. And this is what it looks like a year later. A lot of the criticism of this fuel work that we hear is that you leave the area devoid and lacking in structure, but if there's no structure to begin with, we just we mitigate where we can for wildlife habitat, and encourage some of the sprouting vegetation to come back where it's going to be grazed properly, and then just maintain that at a certain level that's good for the site. And this is an aerial representation of that same project, where you can see that's going to be really change fire behavior as it moves through there. It's going to be a lot less moving through the crown. There's what we call variable density, where you have some openings, it's not perfectly spaced, and some fuel break kind of work. And then you can also see some of the best management practices that were mentioned and will probably be mentioned, where we have some retention areas in the drainages with different species, hardwoods and everything And this is in Mariposa County. It's a natural stand that was regenerated after harvest, but this is the property line, and it's pretty solid all the way down. This is about 80 acres, and we came in and did this kind of work to, again, break up those continuities, try to get the fire to behave differently in there. And then this is in higher elevation, at about 5,000 feet, and again, you know, it's a matter of your goals. You know, this landowner's goal was really production oriented to keep the stocking level the highest level they could for timber production. And you know, the site was pretty remote, so it didn't really pay to have a piece of equipment move in. And the best we could do was kind of a lop and scatter treatment on that. And then this final example is in the Tuolumne River drainage area. It's on the rim. It's on the canyon top, and was in the rim fire recently. And so we came in and did this work on 80 acres, and you know, we all sat around and said, "Oh, it looks really good. You know, this should be fine." And then the rim fire burned it, and not a stick survived. So, you know, we had all those elements in there, but you know, the lesson is that, you know, it's great to have all of you here and forming groups and trying to do this on a large scale, because you can do these treatments, but you know, it's really at the landscape level where, you know, you have some of these really high intensity fires. They can burn, you know, the canopy gaps in here would have had to be about 8 acres to have some of this land make it through that fire. So I guess the moral of the story is not everything's going to work, but you know, all we can do is what we can do with the property that we have. So in summary, you know, the main characteristics of a fire healthy forest is to have some variability in there. That's both, you know, spatial variability, species variability, and you know, the initial step you can take, often the most common and intuitive one, is to address the surface loading on the forest floor. That does a lot of work. That's what carries the fire most through the stand. Next would be to, you know, have low levels of ladder fuels to prevent that fire from moving up, and then increase your crown heights as much as possible. And this ending slide is a stand that was in the complex fire in '86, and this is what it looks like today. And it's kind of at that point where someone needs to make a decision whether or not to do something. Now is the time to do something with this, and you know, what it is, you know, up to the landowner. But it's at this point, if you do a treatment, it's fairly effective and cost effective. If you let it go much further than that, you start to really battle uphill with these treatments. So that's forest health in 15 minutes. 20.
Questions?
Questions?
I have a question. On the private land, can you use prescribed burn? I mean, can you do that? Or
You know, I
is it
almost just mentioned that here, that this is a perfect stand to burn,
that
but
would be perfect.
it would be the perfect treatment. You've got all those characteristics from the past fire. You've got really high crown heights. You've got fairly low fuels. The flame lengths would be suitable for a burn under the right conditions, but at this point in time, basically the liability is just too great. Yeah, so once we get into the northern part of the state, I think you see a little more fire being used kind of in the coastal areas, and then into Oregon, but
Moisture.
I'm sorry?
Because it's moisture.
Yeah, you have a little bit of a better burn window. The burn window in the Sierra is very narrow, and because of the population infrastructure, you know, the development density and the air quality issues that we face, it's a real challenge, but it would be the best treatment wherever it's possible.
You showed a slide of the Aspen Meadow forest. Was that did you characterize that as a healthy forest?
That was a pre-suppression forest. Yeah, so this was,
And do you know what its status was after the ring fire burned it?
I don't. This was, they had some data on this stand. I think this was one of Scott Stevens' studies. And so this is, like in the Inuit and some of these other valleys where they've basically let fires go, they've had 150 fires in the past 40 to 60 years or something like that. And never a real high suppression rate to begin with. And these are just characteristics that they've seen. I don't know the conditions of it afterwards, but like I said, if your ultimate goal is short rotation production forestry, this wouldn't be healthy from a manager standpoint. But for fire resiliency, this is what everybody's looking at as a potential reference model for that habitat. So it should be able to withstand typical fire conditions, if there's such a thing left, and have the major ecosystem functions still intact.
Last question.
We had, where we are in Midpines, we have ancient oak trees, maybe 300 years old, so the experts say, and things like that. And we found one way of dealing it from our horses. We've got about 20 head of horses, but anyway, they just clear the bites out. You still can have a canopy fire, but, and that's what I wanted to ask you, but what we found also is the Dexter camel. I've been at various meetings mentioning this. They're the smallest of the standard breed, but what they do is really clear the bottom layer, and then you're just addressing pretty much mid or canopy fires.
Mm-hmm.
And but is there anything to protect these older trees like this that, besides trimming them up, that we addressed already? But I'm just wondering if there's more thoughts on that. But we have one where we placed the second house, and supposedly it's 350 plus years old, a white oak. And it's a specimen, to say the least. I mean, there's all over the place in the areas like that too. So you don't want to lose these trees, yet you don't want to lose your, see there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's, without being able to see it, it's hard to make recommendations, but, creating, if there's trees that are desirable to thin around it, and just give it, if there is continuity in the, the canopy and mid-story layers, removing some of those and just some of the thinning, understory brushing kind of stuff. But, yeah, without being able to see it, it's hard to say for sure.